Hi, everyone. This is Aaron from SOLA Network, and we have a very special guest today, Tim Challies. Tim, thanks for joining us. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, thanks for having me. Tim Challies, as you said, I live in or just outside Toronto, Canada, up here in the cold. I am a husband to Aileen. We're coming up on our 25th wedding anniversary, and we've got two girls who are college age and a son who's in heaven. And I'm a pastor slash elder at Grace Fellowship Church that's just within the bounds of Toronto.
Yeah. I'm sure that most people who are watching, listening to this already know who you are, but maybe people don't really know about SOLA Network. And so I wanted to ask you, how did you hear about us? I want personally, I want to say thank you for including our articles in your a la carte. It always boosts the traffic on our website. Yeah, how did you hear about us?
Sure, yeah. I don't exactly remember, but I think it's because you either hosted or were associated with a conference. And I was hoping to be able to attend that conference. I spotted it somewhere online and it just looked interesting. I guess it was geared specifically for ministry within an Asian American context.
Hmm.
I serve in a Canadian context, but it still sounded just very interesting. And I was really hoping I'd be able to make it. Unfortunately, the came right down to the wire and I just couldn't make the flights work. But I think from there, I maybe traced it backwards to the website. That's the best I can reconstruct.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that might have been the Asian American Leadership Conference. That was probably maybe that was it. But anyways, I'm glad that you're visiting the website, and thanks for checking out the work and giving it some boosts.
Yeah, my
I
pleasure.
yeah, I reviewed your book for our website, Seasons of Sorrow, and that was kind of it wasn't really I didn't know if we would be able to get in touch with you, and so I'm happy that we can talk about that. I will link the review in the show notes. Did you want to just give kind of a brief rundown about the book? And then it's been 6 months pretty much since it was published. I wanted to ask how have you felt during the time?
Yeah. Yeah, so Seasons of Sorrow, the subtitle is The Pain of Loss and the Comfort of God. And that's a book that came out of a really devastating loss of my son. Nick was 20 years old. He was a student at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. He was just newly engaged. And then he was out just playing a game with his friends in a nearby park close to the campus and just collapsed and passed away. And at the time, we were in Canada. We were at home. Aileen and I, his sister was with him, his fiance was with him, but the rest of the family was at home. And we got the news, and that just sort of launched us into what I would later describe then as a season of sorrow. And I didn't realize it as I started writing. I didn't realize I was writing a book. I was just writing my own thoughts and reflections. It's just the way I think and meditate and process life's events. And so
Mm.
I started writing things, working through the pain and the grief in my own heart and mind. And then eventually, as I started getting through that first year, I thought, well, maybe I could just take all this writing and turn it into a book. And so, yeah, it's been out for about 6 months now, and I've been just very, very encouraged with the response. And as much as I wrote it for a broad audience, I think there's something there for everyone because we all suffer. We may not suffer the loss of a child, but we're all going to suffer in some way
Mm.
in this life, and all of us will suffer some sort of loss in this way. So mine is very specifically written out of my own experience. I think there's a lot of universal themes, but then I wrote it very particularly for people who have lost a child. And I think the greatest encouragement for me has been to hear from parents who have lost a child and to learn that it does describe not just my experience, but a lot of universal experience, and then has been helpful and comforting to them.
Yeah. So you've written blogs, pretty much giving family updates since everything happened. Do you find that it helps you to write about it still and to kind of give updates? Like, what's your thought process behind that?
Yeah. So I do write about it from time to time. There's a couple of things going on in my mind. I've been thinking about this quite a bit lately.
Mhm.
Number one, I don't want to be somebody who only writes on that subject, and so I'm trying
Mm.
to make sure I write about a wider variety of things. I don't want to just be focused forever on grief in general, or even on that grief, because as hard as it was, as hard as it still is, it doesn't define me. It's not my identity. And I think at times it could threaten to be that. And so I'm aware that I don't want to be only about that. I'm aware as well that if people are going to keep coming to my site, eventually that won't interest them forever. And so I think there is a place for some updates, and there is a place just to be real about, just recently, it would have been Nick's 23rd birthday just a few days ago, and I wrote about that. And so, I think from time to time offering those updates and those reflections. But on the other hand, God hasn't called me to just that. This is something I believe God caused me to pass through, this loss, but I think he's still got other things for me to do in life and other things to accomplish. And so I'm still very much eager to try to understand what those are and to just carry out those tasks for his sake and his glory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do read your site, and I do offer up some short prayers when you do give the updates. So yeah, you are definitely being prayed for on that part, and I do appreciate
Yeah.
the updates just to hear what's going on. For SOLA,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, for SOLA, you wrote something for us as well. What you wrote was an article called "If God Would Outsource His Sovereignty." And so, like you said, you kind of don't want to be necessarily writing about, grief or the entire time, but I do see like hints of it in that article, maybe a little bit. Can you give us kind of a behind the scenes of that article that you wrote for SOLA?
Yeah. Well, you would know probably that we have been in touch, and there's just been thought about, hey, what about writing an article for SOLA? And your team had proposed one that I tried to write and just didn't find the ability to write it. And it was on the theme of loss, but a particular area, and I just never found my bearings with it. And so after trying and flailing for a while, I just thought, well, why don't I just find something else that's on my heart and write about that? And so yeah, the theme I wrote about, God outsourcing his sovereignty, was this idea that all of us want to be used by God. We all want to, as Christians, want to live in this world for his glory. But most of us hold back a lot of areas in life where we don't want to be used by God. We honor people who have been used by God in very difficult ways. In the article, I bring up someone like Johnny Erickson Tata. We love Johnny, who hasn't been inspired and encouraged by her. Yet I don't think too many of us would be willing to be her, to endure the pain, the sorrow that she's endured, the lifetime of paralysis that she's endured. And so even as we, live before the Lord with what we think are open hands, maybe we're holding back a lot and saying, I'm willing to be used by you in this way and that way and the other way, but not these ways. And so that was on my heart. And that's where the idea came of, well, what if God allowed us to choose our gifts? And he said, you can select whatever you want, however you want to serve me. I don't think there would be too many of the Johnny Erickson Tatas in the world to bless the church and to serve as examples to us, because none of us would choose that. And so we have to entrust all these things to the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for writing that article. It did reach a lot of people, and I think that it will stay on our site and still affecting a lot more to come. So writing for SOLA, okay, you normally write for your own website, but for writing for somebody like us, it's like a platform, I guess. We have multiple authors and things like that. You've obviously been doing this for a long time, even longer than SOLA has. And so I wanted to ask you for some advice, maybe some wisdom in terms of like, how can a platform like SOLA, a ministry, parachurch ministry, have longevity and keep faithfulness in what we're trying to do?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose I would start by just making sure you know who you are and what you're convinced the Lord is calling you to do as an organization. And I think in the church in general, and maybe I see this especially in the American church, is this drive to be big, to keep growing. And there's that business principle that you must keep growing, because if you're not growing, you're declining. And so your business must always be reaching new people and introducing new products and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of ministries adopt that mindset, and there may be very good reasons for that. But I think what can happen in quite a number of ministries is they get too big. And then as they get too big, they start to lose the plot a little bit. They forget what they were all about to begin with. And
Mm.
so I think it's very hard to keep that original sense of our purpose
Mm.
as we grow and grow. And so, you start as a site that's just about writing. We're going to serve the church through writing. And then you begin to add podcasts and conferences and all the rest. And those may be very, very good things as
Mhm.
long as they're connected back to the main purpose. And as long as they're not causing you to overextend yourselves financially or in terms of just manpower and other things. So
Mm.
I think just really focusing on here's how we think we can best serve God's people. And yeah, another thing that comes to mind is that the age of the generalist writer is probably come and gone, I think. And so I started very early in the era of blogging. And at that time, there weren't many writers. So we could write about just about whatever was of interest to us. And people would read it because there's so little content being created by comparison back then. Today, it's much more important, I think, to be specialist and to pick your area of expertise or your area of interest and
Mm.
to write to that. And your team has obviously done that in making your focus on the Asian American church. And I think that's absolutely perfect because now you've
Mm.
got a focus and you've got a dedicated audience and you know what you're about and you're not trying to be all things to all men. You're trying to reach this one group for this one purpose. I think that's
Mm.
very healthy and will serve you well.
Uh, well, thank you, man, and thank you for even just supporting us by writing and by doing this one. I want to be able to direct people towards things that you're doing as well. Can you tell us about any upcoming projects you might have?
Yeah, so I've got a new book coming out in the summer. I've got a series of books called Words from the Wise, which is graphics combined with quotes. So quotes from figures in the church and church history. And then those are combined with a graphic that's created by a friend of mine, Jules Copeland. And then together we create that, and then I write a little devotional. And so volume 2 of that Words from the Wise series is coming out in the summer. And then I'm also this year working on a project called Worship Around the World. And this
Mm.
is a project where the end result will be both a book and a documentary, 12-part documentary series. And the purpose of the project is we're going around the world to worship in 12 different churches that are theologically sound and committed to scripture, but also deeply embedded in their own culture. And so we are very interested in seeing how Christians worship truly, rightly, in a way that honors God, but also in a way that's really influenced by their local culture. That could be in the style of music, it could be in the style of worship, it could be in just in the way they worship within their building. And so, I've been to churches in India where the men will sit on one side of the room and the women will sit on the other. That would be shocking and inappropriate in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, but there's good reasons they may do that there in
Mm.
India. And so
Mm.
these are the sorts of things we want to explore. Or I will be visiting a church in South Korea where there's a prayer meeting every day at 5 a.m. You can do whatever you want. You're not going to be able to start a 5 a.m. prayer meeting in Toronto, I don't think. So what is going on in that church and what's the
Mm.
context and culture there that
Mm.
such a thing could not only happen, but even thrive?
Yeah.
A church in Cambodia where a brand new people group that's just been reached with the gospel and they're just starting to develop their own songs, their own hymnody, and very little instrumentation in that culture. So how do you develop music in a new culture like that? So these are the sorts of things we'll be exploring around the world and hopefully just giving this big global vision of what God is up to each and every Sunday as people rise, gather, and worship him.
Yeah. And I love that. It's like looking at local churches, right, and their specific contexts and cultures. But when you look at a bunch of them from all over the place, yeah, you do get this spectrum, of just like what God is doing. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
looking
And
forward
what
to
I'm
that.
really hopeful for is that I think the church in the West tends to have this idea that we've got it right and we need to export what we do to the rest of the world. And
Mm.
I'm hoping that in some ways a project like that just messes with our presuppositions a little bit so
Yeah.
we can see, sure, there's strengths in our cultural context we can export, but there's weaknesses that can be addressed by importing.
Mm.
And so what can we learn from other cultures, from other Christians in other cultures, and how they apply the truths? I think that should be, I hope, just fascinating.
Yeah, man, that's right in our wheelhouse. I'll be looking forward to
Mhm.
checking that out and sharing it with everybody at SOLA as well.
Yeah,
Tim,
thank you.
thank you for your time, man. I did want to dedicate some time and ask you if you'd be willing to read If God Would Outsource His Sovereignty. Would you be willing to do that for us
Sure.
here? Thanks, man.
Yep. I even have my iPad sitting right
Awesome,
here. Just
awesome.
got told me to
Thanks for
be doing
doing
this.
it.
So you just
Yeah,
want me to read it from
yeah,
beginning to end?
yeah. You can just read it straight. Yeah.
All right. All right. Good. So this is If God Would Outsource His Sovereignty. I want you to imagine that at least for a time, the Lord would see fit to involve us in selecting the providences we would receive from His hand. I want you to imagine that through one of His deputies, an angel perhaps, He would approach us to ask how we would prefer to serve Him. In other words, I want you to imagine that for just a while, God would choose to offshore His sovereignty and outsource it to us. I expect it might go something like this. A day came when one of God's angels appeared before a group of Christians worshiping together as a local church. He stood before them and said, "The Lord has asked me to distribute some of the gifts of His providence, gifts that will equip you to serve others on His behalf. I heard you sing in the hymn, 'Take my life and let it be,' and I thought this would be just the right time. So first up, I've got the gift of generosity. Is there someone here who would like to serve the Lord by distributing vast sums of money?" He glanced at a clipboard he held in his hands and added, "I should point out this gift comes with a great deal of cash. It looks like $10 or $12 million, and that's just a start." Just about every hand shot up. The angel pointed at a couple of people who, with great smiles on their faces, came forward to collect their gift. "And now I've got some rare talents to distribute." Flipping quickly through the pages, he said, "I've got a towering intellect, great athleticism, and prime leadership ability. Who would like those?" Once more, a great many hands went up, and once more, a group of people approached the front of the room to receive what they had chosen. To each, the angel said, "Take this and commit it to the glory of God and the good of His people." Each solemnly nodded as they took what was now theirs. "Next, I've got high position. It seems that someone here is destined for the corridors of power. Who would like to lead in this way?" There were perhaps fewer hands raised this time, but still a good many. And so it went through magnetic personality and teaching ability and musical talent until there were just a few people who remained. A few people who, though they had raised their hands many times, had still not received their gift, their special calling from the Lord. Don't worry, I've definitely got something for each of you. And it looks like the next item on my list is quadriplegia. Who would like that? After an initial gasp of surprise, the people sat in silence, hands at their sides, eyes steadfastly fixed on the floor. "No one wants this one?" You all know Johnny Erickson Tata, don't you? Aren't you thankful for her ministry? Haven't you been blessed and inspired by her? Hasn't her joy spurred on your own faith? Surely someone is willing to serve in the ways she has. Every hand remained down. I guess I'll have to come back to that one. How about grievous loss? Who is willing to be bereaved so you can be a blessing to other Christians who will endure a loss of their own? You know, like Elizabeth Elliot. I know how much you love her story. Who's willing to lose a loved one and remain steadfast in your faith? To reassure others that you love God not just because of the good things He has given you, but because He is so worthy of your love. The room remained silent and still. Friends, listen. Haven't you ever been comforted in your sorrows by someone who had endured the same sorrow? Weren't you thankful that God provided someone who truly understood your pain and who could comfort you with the comfort they had received from the Lord? Aren't you willing or even eager to be that for someone else? Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower sputtered to life, but there was no other sound beyond the occasional nervous cough. The angel, perhaps a little sorrowful now, began to flip quickly through the sheets on his clipboard. Infertility, widowhood, persecution, miscarriage. Won't anyone take these? Won't anyone accept them? In the back of the room, a voice finally broke the awkward silence. "Do you have any more of those rare talents or high positions?" The reality, of course, is that God does not ask what gifts of His providence we would like to receive from His hand. But He does hear us when we sing, "Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee." He does take us at our word when we sing, "All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give." He does listen and respond when we echo Jesus to say, "Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." He distributes the gift of His providence in ways that further His cause and bless His people. And as we receive these from His hand, we can rest assured that in the life of the Christian, there are not two classes of providence, one good and one bad. No, though some may be easy and some hard, all are good, because all in some way flow from his good, fatherly hand, and all in some way can be consecrated to his service. For we are not our own, but belong to him in body and soul, in life and in death, in joy and in sorrow, in the circumstances we would have chosen and the ones we would have avoided at all costs. It falls to us to receive what he assigns, to receive it with trust in his goodness and with confidence in his purposes, willing and eager to steward it all faithfully for the good of his beloved people and the glory of his great name.
Thanks, Tim. That's great, man. Thank you for writing that, and thank you for your book. Thank you for sharing your story and your life and your faith. And thank God for your faith, man. Thank you for everything.